This video is going to provide you with the answers that you will need to help prepare you for the test and to give you something to study off of, as these questions will show up in some way, shape, or form throughout the test that you take next class. Okay, so hopefully this will be a good study device for you once you've completed it and seen where your deficits are. For number 1, the solution to x plus 2y equals 6 when y is equal to 0 is the ordered pair blank. So we're looking for an ordered pair, and in the ordered pair it tells you the y value has to equal 0. So you can go ahead and automatically fill that in. Now to find the x value, you go back to the equation, turn the y to 0, and solve it. So we have x plus 2 times 0 equals 6. 2 times 0 is 0, so really you are just left with x equals 6. Now that you know your x value, put that in the ordered pair, and your ordered pair is 6, 0. And that, remember, is the x-intercept to that equation as well. For number 2, the solution to a linear equation is a line. Okay, so anytime you see the word line and they're asking you what type of equation, it's linear. For number 3, the graph of any equation of the form y equals b is a blank line. If it starts with a y and doesn't have an x, then it is always going to be a horizontal line, because the only thing it's got is a y-intercept, right? And that means it's slicing through the y-axis and will never touch the x. For number 4, to find the x-intercept of any equation, you set the y equal to 0 and you solve it for x. Remember, when you want the x, you solve for x and kick the other letter out of the equation. For number 5, the slope of a line is the ratio rise to run, okay, or rise over run too. For number 6, a rate of change compares a change in one quantity to a change in another quantity, also known as the blank of a line. Rate of change is a synonym for the word slope. So when you are finding rate of change, you are also finding the slope. Number 7, slope-intercept form is expressed as the linear equation y equals mx plus b. That's knowing your formulas. Okay, where the b represents the y-intercept and m represents the slope. Okay. For number 8, it asks you to explain why a linear equation has an infinite number of solutions. Right? And there's several ways you can phrase this, so you don't have to use my exact wording as long as you understand the concept behind it. Right? A linear equation is a line, and lines have infinite numbers of points on them. That's what those arrows mean, is that it keeps going and going and going, right? So because it does that, you can pick an unlimited amount of points and it would still be on that line. Another way you could look at it is that any number can be plugged in for x, and a y can be figured out. So because you can be putting in any x number you want, right, it will still allow you to get a y value. So if you can do that, you've got an infinite amount of possibilities in terms of your ordered pairs. For numbers 9 and 10, the directions ask you to describe the mistake and find the correct answer. Right, so I'm going to start with the original problem and do the problem from scratch, and then I'm going to compare my results to the student solution and see if I can figure out what they did wrong. So when you are given an ordered pair and you're asked if that is a solution to an equation, you're substituting your x and your y value into the equation. Right, so the equation says y minus x equals 3. My y value is 11 minus my x value, which is 8. And that's supposed to equal negative 3, right? Well, 11 minus 8 is positive 3. So does 3 equal negative 3? And of course, the answer is not going to be a true statement, so it's no. So the answer is no. Their statement, they did 8 minus 11 equals negative 4, and got negative 3 equals negative 3. There's actually two mistakes here. The first mistake that they made is that they plugged the wrong numbers in for x and y. And then the second mistake, and maybe it's a typo at this point, is that it says equals negative 4 instead of negative 3. Right? But the real big idea here is making sure that you plug the right values in. So in terms of their mistake, you can say that they plugged the values in wrong. So on the test, you will have to not only correct the mistake, but you also have to tell me what they did wrong in the first place. For number 10, your directions are to graph the line with an x-intercept of positive 1 and a y-intercept of negative 2. So if it's an x-intercept, it's on the x-axis at positive 1, so that would be right there. And a y-intercept of negative 2 would be on the y-axis at negative 2, which would be right there, and then you connect them. So the line that I have just drawn is the actual right answer, but that's not all you have to do. You have to also be able to describe their mistake. Well, if you look at their line, they put the x-intercept on the x-axis at -2 and their y-intercept on the y-axis at +1. Well, if you look at the actual problem, they reversed it. So the reason that they got this wrong is because they graphed the intercepts on the wrong axis. And some of you are guilty of doing that as well, so be careful. Okay, so if you want an x-intercept, it goes on an x-axis. If you want a y-intercept, it goes on the y-axis. All right, going to 11 and 12, this is going back to some more fill in the blank. For number 11, a blank is any equation of the line y equals kx. Right, well, you should know by memorizing your formulas right now that y equals k times x is going to represent direct variation. Okay, when you go to read number 12, a blank is any equation of the form y equals k divided by x. And again, from your formula knowledge, that would be inverse variation. Okay, for number 13, these are true or false statements. The equation x times y equals -2 is a direct variation. The only way you're going to be able to know that is by solving it for y, because it's got to be in y equals format. So if I take x times y equals -2 and I want to get y by itself, I have to divide by x. When I divide by x, you now have y equals -2 divided by x. The statement says that that is direct variation. And if you know your formulas well enough, you know that that is inverse. So this would be a false statement. For number 14, if you are given y equals 2x, the constant of variation is 2. Remember, constant of variation is the letter k in your formula. So if this is y equals k times x, they're saying the k value is 2, and that's what the statement says. So this would be a true statement. Right? And that's knowing your pieces to your formulas and what they stand for. For number 15, which statement is true for the function whose graph is shown? This is the line, the one that I'm putting arrows on, that you're considering, and your choices are A, B, C, and D. Right, if we're dealing with the domain and range, we have to look carefully at each one. For letter A, it says the domain is all real numbers. Domain pertains to the letter x. If you look at this line, they all have the same x values, so there's no way it can be all real numbers. So we have to throw out A. If we go to B, they're saying the x value is everything less than or equal to -3. Well, that's not true either, because the x value is only one number. It can't be any other number, so that's out. If you go to letter C, the range is all real numbers. Remember, range is your y values. If you travel up and down on this line, you will come across every single y number under the sun. Right? So yes, it is all real numbers. So C is your correct answer. And those arrows actually give you that hint as well. If you flip your paper over to the back side, there's a couple more multiple choice before we go into some actual solvings. For number 16, the x-intercept of the graph with this equation is 2. What is the value of A? Right, so the first thing you have to know is, what does it mean to find x-intercept? So in our case, that means we kick the y out of the problem. Right, so once we do that, we have ax equals 20. Right, and then they told you in the actual question what the value of x was. They told you that x-intercept, right, and that's what this 2 is. So we're going to take the x value and turn it into a 2. So it's a times 2 equals 20. And in order to solve this for a, we're going to divide by 2. And 20 divided by 2 is going to give us 10. So the correct answer is going to be letter D. Okay. And you can double check behind yourself by plugging that in to see if it will give you the x-intercept. For number 17, you want to pick which graph or which equation makes the graph in the picture. And the best thing to do is start with the y-intercept and then rule your choices out from there. Right, so my y-intercept occurs at +2. So if I look at my choices, I can throw out C and D because they have -2. And then if I look at my difference between A and B, one has a negative slope and one has a positive slope. Just by looking at the direction of the line, I know it's a negative slope because it's going downhill. So letter A has to be the right answer. If you can't tell that by looking, then pick another point and do rise over run, and you'll be able to get that the slope is -2. Okay. For 18 and 19, you are asked to find the x and y intercepts. You do not need to graph them. You simply just need to be able to show me that you can calculate them. So for x-intercept, we keep the x and throw out the y. So you should be solving the equation 3x equals 15. And to do that, we divide by 3. And we get x equals 5. Now we can't leave our answer x equals 5. You need to write it with either the -int or write it as the ordered pair. For me, it's a lot easier just to turn it into the ordered pair and then call it a day. So 5, 0 is your x-intercept. Now to find your y-intercept, you kick the x out of the problem and you solve it for y. So you end up with 5y equals 15. Divide by 5 and you get y equals 3. Again, don't leave it y equals 3, turn it into the ordered pair. That would be 0, 3. So when they ask you for the x and y intercepts, it's two separate ordered pairs that you have been able to generate. So for number 19, we're going to do the same thing, right? We want the x, we don't want the y, so kick the y out. You've got negative x equals 8. Divide by negative 1 to get rid of that negative sign, and x equals negative 8, or the order pair negative 8, 0. For the y value, kick the x out, so you're going to solve 4y equals 8, divide by 4, and you get y equals 2, so the order pair is going to be 0, 2. So there's your x and y intercepts for both of those equations. And then if I ask you from there to graph it, you should be comfortable with doing so. Remember, that is the only method where you will have 2 dots on your line to connect and make the straight line. All other methods require 3. For 20 and 21, you are given 2 order pairs and you have to calculate the slope. Remember, this is where you use the slope formula, which is your y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Again, make sure you have these formulas memorized. The more you have them memorized, the easier this is going to be. All right, so we plug in our numbers, and for the top it will say 4 minus 1. For the bottom it'll say 3 minus 2. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. Don't forget to simplify. Your final answer is positive 3. Go to number 21 and do the same thing with different values. Your top will say 0 minus 4. Your bottom will say 5 minus 2. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. 5 minus 2 is positive 3. I can't reduce it. I can't divide it. My final answer is negative 4/3. Okay, so know that formula and know how to use it. For number 22, you're still going to use that formula, but this time one of the values is missing. They give you the slope, but you have to find the missing number. So this takes a little bit more work, but you guys have the skills and you know what to do with this if you slow down and think about it. So use the formula first. My m value is 2/3 equals y2 is negative 3 minus y1, which is 3. On the bottom, x2 is x minus x1, which is negative 4. So clean up the top and clean up the bottom. So our new equation is going to be 2/3 equals negative 6 over x plus 4. You have just created a proportion, and we solved proportions back in Unit 2. So you have to cross multiply in order to make this happen and find that missing x value. When you go 2 times x plus 4, you write it as 2 parentheses x plus 4. And then equals, and then go the other direction. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. And now you're going to solve this. Distribute first, so you get 2x plus 8 equals negative 18. Subtract your 8. So now you've got 2x equals negative 26. Divide by 2. And the missing value for x in this problem is negative 13. And if you wanted to, you could go all the way back to the proportion and take the x out and turn it to negative 13 and see if it works. Okay, you'll have negative 6 over negative 13 plus 4 is negative 9. 2 negatives turn positive. If you reduce 6 over 9, you do get 2/3. So you know that that's the right value if you take the time to go back and plug it in. If you don't take the time to go back and plug it in, you're taking a risk. So unless you really know what you're doing, there's a good chance that you might miss that question. All right, for 23 to 26, the directions say graph using the slope-intercept form. That's the M and the B. There should be no tables. There should be no x and y intercepts. There's 3 dots after you have the M and the B. And all of these equations are ready to go. There's no math to do to them. After you name the M and the B, it's simply counting. So in number 23, your M is negative 1. Your B is negative 2. You begin at the B, negative 2 on the y-axis. Okay, now to get your next one, we turn negative 1 into a fraction, so it's negative 1 over positive 1. That means you go down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, and you connect. And there's your picture. Go to 24. Your M is negative 4, and your B is 0. You're going to start at the origin, and you're going to do negative 4 over positive 1. That means down 4 and right 1. I don't have any more room, so I'm going to go back to start, and I'm going to go up 4 and left 1. You actually just created a direct variation line out of that picture. 25, your M is 0. If you don't have an x, your slope is 0. Your B is positive 4. So you go to positive 4 on the y-axis, and if you have 0 slope, you're not rising any at all, but you're running left and right. This is where you get your horizontal line out of this. Many of you would have known that if you've caught on to this equation without even having to write the M and the B. For 26, f of x is a fancy way of saying y. So your M equals 1/5, and your B equals 2. Start at positive 2. Your slope is rise 1, run 5. So up 1 and right 5. I don't have any more room. Go back to start. Down 1 and left 5. And I'm off a little bit here. Let me fix this one. So that would be right here and right here. Now take your straight edge and connect it. And don't forget your arrows when you're graphing your lines. Okay, for number 27, we haven't talked a whole lot about this, but it was mentioned in class on Monday, right before you took the test. All right, so we're going to take and make sure that you see it again and hear it again. It's an easy concept to come up with. It's just you have to understand one piece. If two graphs are parallel lines, then the one thing you're looking for is that your m value is the same for each one of them. So in my first equation, my m is positive 2. In my second equation, I need to finish it by dividing everybody by 2, and I get y equals 2x plus 5 over 2. And from that equation, my m is also 2. So because both equations have a slope of 2, then are these parallel lines? Yes. And the reason is because slopes are the same. So if the slopes are the same, they will be parallel lines. And that's all you need to know about that at this point. We'll do a lot more about that with next chapter. So just know, same slope means parallel lines. For number 28, right, you have to rewrite the equation in intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b, and then use your m and your b to graph it. So for number 28, the first thing we want to do is add 12x. Now we've got 6y equals 12x minus 24. Divide everybody by 6. You get y equals 2x minus 4. Your m is 2. Your b is negative 4. Go to your graph. Start at negative 4. Rise 2, run 1, up 2, right 1, up 2, right 1. Draw your line. And there you go. So the trick is getting it intercept form correctly and then identifying m and b. All right, for number 29, you want to subtract 3x. You get negative 2y equals negative 3x plus 4. Divide everybody by negative 2. You get y equals positive 3 over 2x minus 2. So your m is 3 over 2. And your b is negative 2. Start at negative 2 on the y-axis, rise 3, run 2. So up 3, right 2, up 3, right 2, and connect. Okay. And then the last two are numbers 30 and 31. They deal with direct and inverse variation. Again, you're asked to write an equation that relates the two values that are given. So in number 30, it does say the word directly. That's your big clue that you're using y equals k times x. You have to find k first and then go back and plug it into the formula to get the equation. So to find k, we still use the equation though. In place of y, you put 8. K stays k, x turns into 1. To get k, you divide by 1. And we're going to get a k value of 8. Now you're not finished, that's just your k value. Your final answer is y equals 8x. You take that k value and turn it into the number you just calculated. Okay, but you have to go back and do that. For 31, you'll see that the keyword is inversely. So that's your formula y equals k divided by x. Same thing, find the k, then go back to your formula and plug it in and get your equation. So once again, y is 8, k we don't know, and x is 1. So to get rid of that, we multiply by 1, and you get k equals 8. Once again, this is just coincidental, by the way. All right, so with our k value being 8, we go back to our equation and we plug it in, and we get y equals 8 divided by x. So that's our inverse variation problem. You will have both direct and inverse variations on the test. So make sure you practice those formulas and know what you're doing with them.